Warren Hartfield didn't believe in fate. 62 years of Montana winters had taught him a man made his own luck through hard work and the good sense to know a prize breeding mare when he saw one. The January wind cut through his leather coat like it had a personal grudge, 15 below. His horse's breath steamed in the frozen air as they reached the Castellano trading post around noon. The place looked half dead, weathered wood, crooked sign, snow drifted against the stable walls. He pushed open the stable door. The smell rolled out first. Manure and moldy hay, but something sharper underneath. Rust. Old blood, if you knew the scent. Then he heard it. A wet, rattling cough. Wrong sound for a stable. She was curled in the corner of the feed room, small and broken, maybe 9 years old. Her wrists chained to an iron bolt in the wall, scabbed burns on her thin arms, fever-flushed cheeks, one hand gripping a gold pocket watch like her life depended on it. Bootsteps behind him. Business done? Victor Castellano stood in the doorway, red-faced and sweating even in the cold. The mare's yours for $800. The girl, hell, throw in an extra 20. She don't eat much. Got papers to prove she's mine. Warren's fist connected with Victor's jaw before conscious thought caught up. Victor hit the frozen mud hard, spitting blood. You just assaulted a legal guardian, Hartfield. He smiled through broken teeth. See you in court. Warren carried her to his horse. She weighed nothing, like a shadow held together by breath alone. The pocket watch stayed clenched in her fist. He wrapped his coat around her and rode hard for town. The wind howled across the plains, but she didn't make a sound, just stared at nothing with fever-bright eyes. Doc Sarah Brennan met him at her door before he could knock. Must have seen him coming. She was a practical woman, 55 and steel-spined, with hands that had set bones and delivered babies across half the territory. Inside, she said. No questions yet. The clinic smelled of carbolic and wood smoke. Doc lit more lamps and got to work. Warren stood by the stove, watching. Doc cut away the filthy dress. Her professional mask didn't slip, but Warren saw her jaw tighten. Burns covered the girl's arms in deliberate patterns. Old breaks in 3 fingers, healed crooked, ribs showing through paper-thin skin. Pneumonia, Doc said quietly, pressing her ear to the child's chest. Malnutrition, dehydration. She touched one of the scabbed burns. These were made with something metal, held against the skin long enough to... She stopped. Someone did this on purpose, Warren. The girl's breathing rattled like seeds in a dried gourd. She won't let go of that watch, Warren said. Doc tried to pry the small fingers open. The girl's eyes snapped wide, terrified. All right, honey. Doc's voice gentled. You keep it. We'll work around it. She bathed the child with warm water and clean cloths, wrapped her in blankets, spooned broth between cracked lips. The girl swallowed without waking fully, some animal instinct still fighting to live. Warren made coffee he didn't drink and watched the lamplight flicker across the girl's hollow face. She'll live, Doc finally said. Body will heal anyway. The rest... She pulled Warren aside. These burns spell something. Letters. L-I-A-R, branded into her like cattle. Warren's coffee cup cracked in his grip. I'll write a medical report, Doc said. You'll need it. For when her uncle comes looking. He already threatened legal action. Good. Doc's eyes were hard. Let him try. I've got enough evidence here to hang him. But the law didn't work on evidence alone. Warren was learning that. The sheriff arrived at Warren's ranch the next morning with Victor Castellano in a face full of reluctance. Warren had brought the girl home in the night, settled her in the spare bedroom. Mrs. Chen, his housekeeper, sat with her now. The child still hadn't spoken. Warren, Sheriff Morrison took off his hat, snow-dusting his shoulders. We got a situation. Victor stood behind him, jaw bruised purple, holding a leather folder. His smile was oil on water. My niece, Victor said. Ruby Mae Castellano, her father, my brother Marcus, died 6 weeks ago. Made me her legal guardian before he passed. He pulled papers from the folder. All notarized, all proper. Warren didn't move from his porch. The morning was bright and bitter cold. His breath steamed. That child was chained in your stable, Warren said. Starved, burned, near dead from fever. The children need discipline. Victor's voice carried the practiced smoothness of a man who'd talked his way out of trouble before. She's wild. Bit my foreman clean through the hand. I kept her contained for her own safety. The sheriff cleared his throat. Warren, I seen the papers. Guardianship signed by Marcus Castellano, witnessed by 2 men, dated the day before he died. It's legal. Legal. Warren tasted the word like spoiled meat. Marcus Castellano's estate is in probate, the sheriff continued. 90 days to settle. Circuit Judge Crowley will ride through in March to hear disputes. Until then, he looked genuinely sorry. Blood's blood, Warren. You can't just take a man's kin. Can if that man's trying to kill her. And Victor's smile widened. Strong accusation. You got proof? Or just the word of a rich old rancher who knocked me unconscious and stole a child? Warren's hands flexed. Get yourself a lawyer, the sheriff said quietly. Proper channels, Warren. Doc Brennan's medical report will help, but you need legal standing. He put his hat back on. Judge arrives in 90 days. Make your case then. They left Victor standing in the yard. This ain't over, Hartfield, Victor called. She's mine by law, and the law don't care about your feelings. Warren watched them ride away. 90 days. 3 months to prove what his gut already knew. That some men deserve their kin taken, law be damned. Behind him, through the window, he could see Mrs. Chen sitting beside the small figure in the bed. The girl still clutched that pocket watch. Warren had 90 days to find out why. The town hall meeting was packed. Word traveled fast in Montana territory, especially when it involved Warren Hartfield in a scandal, Victor had called it. Posted notices at the general store, the saloon, the church steps. Public concern regarding child welfare and inappropriate guardianship. Warren walked in with Doc Brennan beside him. The February cold had settled deep, and the hall smelled of damp wool and tobacco smoke. Boots scraped the plank floor. Conversations died like candle flames. Victor stood at the front, dressed in a city suit that looked too fine for Montana. His bruised jaw gave him a martyred air. Neighbors, friends. Victor's voice carried the practiced sorrow of a funeral speech. I come before you with a heavy heart. My brother Marcus died 6 weeks ago, leaving behind his only child, my niece Ruby May, a disturbed, troubled girl who needs family, structure, guidance. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Instead, Victor continued, she's been taken by a man with questionable motives. A wealthy, childless widower who saw an opportunity. That's a damned lie. Warren's voice cut through the hall. Is it? Victor turned to face him. You're 62 years old, Mr. Hartfield, alone for 8 years, no wife, no children. You see a young girl in my care, and within hours you've assaulted me, stolen her, and installed her in your home. What exactly are we supposed to think? The hall erupted. Voices overlapping, some supportive, most suspicious. Silas Blackwood, who owned the mercantile and owed Victor money, stood up. Warren Hartfield's offering $50,000 in bond money for this child. $50,000. That's a fortune for one little girl. Call it what it is, a rich old man buying himself a daughter because his own died. Warren's fist clenched, but Doc Brennan's hand on his arm held him still. I've examined the child, Doc said, standing. Her voice carried the authority of 20 years delivering babies and setting bones. She has burns spelling LIAR on her arms, broken fingers healed without setting, pneumonia from exposure, starvation. That's not discipline, Mr. Castellano. That's torture. Children fear discipline, Victor said smoothly. They invent stories, tell tales. Ruby's always been creative with the truth, hence the reminder. He gestured vaguely. Frontier justice for a frontier problem. Some heads nodded, others looked away, uncomfortable. The preacher stood. Reverend Thomas, old-school Lutheran with a beard down to his chest. Blood is blood, but righteousness is righteousness. If that child was harmed, Victor smiled, a respected physician makes claims. But where's the girl? Why hasn't she spoken? Could it be she's been coached? That Mr. Hartfield has influenced her story? The murmuring grew louder. Warren felt the room turning, slipping away like water through his fingers. He'd never been a talking man. Words were Victor's weapons, not his. We'll see what the law says, Victor finished. I have legal guardianship, granted by my dying brother. Mr. Hartfield has accusations and money. The judge will decide which matters more. The courthouse in Timber Ridge was 40 miles north, brick and stone with the Montana Territory flag snapping in the wind. Judge Emmett Crowley presided, 68, silver-bearded, with eyes that had seen Antietam and didn't forget. He was Warren's friend, had been, since the war. But friendship stopped where the bench began. The hearing took place on a gray afternoon, snow threatening. Victor arrived with a lawyer from Helena, a thin man named Pritchard, with spectacles and a leather case full of documents. Warren had only Doc Brennan's medical report and his own certainty. The matter before this court, Judge Crowley said, concerns the custody of Ruby May Castellano, age 9, orphaned 6 weeks ago upon the death of her father, Marcus Castellano. Victor's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we have here the last will and testament of Marcus Castellano, signed and witnessed. It clearly names Victor Castellano as legal guardian of the child. Furthermore, we have the guardianship papers, also signed and notarized. He paused. 1 day after Marcus Castellano's death. Warren's attention sharpened. 1 day after. But Castellano was expecting his brother's death? Warren asked. My brother was ill for months, Victor said. Consumption, fever. He knew the end was coming. We prepared accordingly. Prepared by getting papers notarized the day after he died. The day before? Pritchard corrected smoothly. The death certificate is dated December 18th. The guardianship papers are dated December 17th, all in order. But Warren had seen Victor at the trading post in mid-December, healthy and unworried. If Marcus was dying, his brother hadn't seemed concerned. Judge Crowley reviewed the documents. His face gave away nothing. Dr. Brennan's medical report notes significant abuse, the judge said. Torture, in fact. Ms. Castellano, how do you respond? Discipline that the child misinterpreted, Victor said. She's always been prone to exaggeration, fanciful. Her father spoiled her. She hasn't spoken since I found her, Warren said. Precisely. Victor leaned forward. Mr. Hartfield frightened her, assaulted me in front of her, took her from the only home she's known. Of course she's traumatized. The judge was silent for a long moment. Wind rattled the courthouse windows. The law recognizes blood relation, Crowley finally said. His eyes met Warren's, apologetic but firm. Mr. Castellano has legal standing as guardian. The papers are in order, witnessed and notarized. Mr. Hartfield has concern, noble concern, but not legal standing. Warren's stomach dropped. However, the judge continued, Dr. Brennan's report raises serious questions. I'm granting Mr. Hartfield temporary custody for 60 days on posting of vow bond. During that time, if evidence of unfitness or criminal behavior can be proven, we'll revisit. If not, and he looked at Warren's, the child returns to her legal guardian. The gavel fell. Outside, Victor caught Warren on the courthouse steps. Snow had started falling, soft and silent. 60 days, old man, Victor said. Enjoy your expensive experiment. When she comes back to me, I'll remember every day you kept her. Warren watched him walk away. Footprints dark in fresh snow. 60 days to prove what he knew in his bones. 60 days to find evidence that could stand against legal papers and blood claims. The snow fell heavier, covering everything. The bank president laid it out plain. $50,000 is 1/5 of your liquid assets, Warren. You'll be land rich and cash poor. Can't hire seasonal men. Can't buy feed if you need it. One bad winter, one cattle disease, and you're finished. Warren signed the bond papers anyway. The scratch of the pen sounded loud in the quiet office. Outside, March wind rattled the windows. The smell of ink and old paper hung heavy. You're betting everything on a child you've known 3 days, the banker said. I'm betting on what's right. Right, don't pay bills. Then I'll learn to live poor. News spread before he reached his horse. By evening, the gossip had teeth. At the general store, conversation stopped when he walked in. At the saloon, men turned their backs. Mrs. Henderson at the boarding house shook her head like he'd lost his mind. $50,000 for a girl child, someone muttered. Unnatural interest, if you ask me. No one asked Warren. They just talked. He rode home under a sky the color of old bruises. The ranch looked the same. Stone house on the ridge, barn solid, cattle dotting the winter brown hills. Everything he'd built in 30 years. Everything now held hostage to 60 days in a judge's ruling. Mrs. Chen met him at the door. She was a small woman, Chinese, who'd come west after her husband died building the railroad. Practical and silent, mostly, but her eyes were warm. The girl, she said, yen. She ate soup, half a bowl. Small victories. Warren found Ruby sitting up in bed, propped against pillows. Mrs. Chen had washed her hair, dressed her in a clean nightgown that hung loose on her thin frame. The pocket watch lay on the quilt beside her hand. The room smelled of lavender soap and wood smoke from the stove. Lamplight made soft shadows on the walls. How you feeling? Warren asked from the doorway. He kept his voice low, like speaking to a spooked horse. She didn't answer, just looked at him with dark eyes that had seen too much. He pulled a chair over, sat down slow. My name's Warren Hartfield. This is my home. You're safe here. Nothing. I know you've got no cause to trust me, he said, or anyone, but I'm going to keep you safe. That's a promise. Her fingers moved slightly, touching the watch. That important to you? Warren asked. She pulled it closer. Your father's? The smallest nod. He must have been a good man, giving you something that fine. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Like she'd learned, tears didn't help. Warren stood. I'll let you rest. Mrs. Chen made dumplings for supper. You get hungry, you just call out. He was at the door when her voice stopped him. Papa taught me numbers. The words were rough, unused, like pulling nails from old wood. Warren turned back. Numbers? He said. Oh, she swallowed. He said numbers don't lie like people do. Smart man. He kept books. For the trading post, Uncle Victor's name is on the sign, but Papa did all the accounting. He'd show me, let me check his work. Her fingers traced the watch's engraving. I can remember them. The numbers, all of them. Remember how? In my head. Papa would say a number once, I'd remember it. He called it a gift. She looked up. Is it wrong? The preacher said pride in your own mind is sinful. Ain't pride if it's true, Warren said. That's just honest inventory. The ghost of a smile touched her face, then faded. Uncle Victor said I was lying about the numbers, said Papa's books were his business, not mine, said I was making up stories to sound important. What kind of numbers did you remember? Cattle counts, money in and out, shares of things. She paused. Papa said he and Uncle Victor were partners, equal shares, but Uncle Victor said Papa was just hired help. Warren's attention sharpened. Partners? Papa had papers, showed me once, said if anything happened, I should remember. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Then Papa got sick, real sick, and Uncle Victor made him tea every night. Papa said it tasted wrong, but Uncle Victor said it was medicine. The room felt colder. How long was your Papa sick? 6 months, got worse every week. By the end, he couldn't hold a pen. His hands shook all the time. She touched the watch again. He gave me this 3 days before he died. Said, remember the numbers, Ruby May. Numbers tell the truth when people can't. Warren sat back down. Your uncle know you can remember like that? Papa told him once. Uncle Victor laughed. Said little girls don't understand business. Her eyes met Warren's. But I do. I remember every page of Papa's books, every number, and they don't match what Uncle Victor told the probate court. Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere, a shutter banged. Ruby, Warren said carefully, if you could prove your uncle was lying about those numbers, would you be willing to tell a judge? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, is he going to take me back? Not if I can help it. Was a promise? Warren thought about legal papers and blood rights and judges bound by law. He thought about 60 days and $50,000 and a ranch he might lose. I promise, he said. She nodded once, like sealing a bargain. Then her eyes drifted closed, exhausted. Warren watched her sleep. A child who remembered numbers. A father who died with shaking hands after 6 months of bitter tea. And an uncle who'd gotten guardianship papers notarized one day too fast. The pieces were there. He just had to figure out how they fit. The newspaper arrived on a Thursday morning. Warren was feeding cattle when Mrs. Chen brought it out, her face tight with worry. The headline ran across the front page of the Helena Register. Millionaire's unnatural interest in orphan. Girl, questions raised. The article was poison dressed as journalism. It detailed Warren's age, his childless state, his wealth. It quoted concerned citizens who wondered about his motives. It mentioned the $50,000 bond, an excessive sum that suggests obsession rather than charity. And it revealed that Victor Castellano had retained Morton & Pierce, a prestigious Chicago law firm, to protect his niece from potential exploitation. Warren read it twice. The second time didn't improve it. They're coming for you, Doc Brennan said when she stopped by that afternoon. She'd seen the paper. Everyone had. Victor's not just fighting for custody. He's destroying your reputation first. Let him try. Warren? She set down her medical bag. The clinic smell of carbolic clung to her coat. People are talking, the kind of talk that sticks. You're a rich old man living alone with a young girl. That newspaper article just gave permission for every dirty mind in the territory to imagine the worst. And I know what I am. But they don't. And worse, the law won't care about truth if Victor's lawyers can plant enough doubt. She pulled a folded document from her bag. This came by courier this morning. Affidavits from 3 witnesses in Choya Bend claiming Marcus Castellano was mentally incompetent for 2 years before his death. That he couldn't manage business affairs. That Victor had to take over everything. Warren read them, each signed and notarized, each claiming Marcus had been confused, forgetful, unable to handle money. Ruby said her father did all the accounting right up until he got sick. What Ruby says won't matter if they can prove her father was incompetent to judge his own business. Doc's voice was grim. If Marcus couldn't manage a trading post, how could he identify a true partner versus an employee? Victor's lawyers will argue the partnership was Marcus's delusion, that Victor was always the sole owner, that Ruby has no inheritance to protect. The trap was elegant. Destroy Marcus's competence, destroy Ruby's claim, destroy Warren's standing to intervene. There's more, Doc said. One of the affidavits is from a doctor. Claims he treated Marcus for progressive mental decline starting in 1887. Victor paid him. Prove it. Doc's eyes were sad. They're professionals, Warren. They've built a paper fortress and we're throwing rocks. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later, mid-March, with late winter clinging stubborn to the ground. Patches of dirty snow still lined the courthouse steps. The sky was the color of old dishwater. Victor arrived with 3 lawyers from Morton and Pierce. They wore Eastern suits and carried leather cases that probably cost more than most Montana families made in a year. The lead attorney was a man named Thornton, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, with a voice that could cut glass. Warren had Doc Brennan's medical report and his own conviction. It didn't feel like enough. The courtroom smelled of tobacco and old wood and nervous sweat. Every seat was filled. The newspaper article had made this entertainment. Judge Crowley took the bench. His face was carved from stone. This court will hear evidence regarding the fitness of Victor Castellano as guardian and the validity of Mr. Hartfield's temporary custody. Thornton stood. Your Honor, we will demonstrate 3 things. First, that Marcus Castellano suffered from progressive mental decline, making any supposed partnership between brothers a tragic misunderstanding. Second, that the child, Ruby May, has been coached to repeat stories that serve Mr. Hartfield's interests. Third, that Mr. Hartfield's motives are at best misguided, at worst predatory. Warren felt the room shift. Thornton presented his case like a conductor leading an orchestra. First, the medical affidavits. Dr. Pearson testified that Marcus had shown confusion, memory loss, and impaired judgment starting in 1887. Could such a man reliably manage business affairs? Thornton asked. No. He would need assistance with all decisions. Would he be capable of understanding a complex partnership agreement? Unlikely. Doc Brennan cross-examined, but the man was slippery as creek ice. Yes, he'd been paid by Victor. No, that didn't compromise his medical opinion. Yes, Marcus had seemed lucid sometimes. But progressive decline had good days and bad days. Next came the witnesses from Cholla Bend. All testified to Marcus's odd behavior, forgetting orders, repeating himself, calling people by wrong names. Did Victor Castellano have to take over his brother's business responsibilities? Thornton asked each one. Yes, yes, yes. Then Thornton produced letters. These were written by Marcus Castellano in late 1888. He held them up. Note the shaking handwriting, the confused thoughts, the repetition. This is not a man who could understand complex business arrangements. Warren recognized Ruby's description, the shaking hands, but she'd said that came during the illness, the last 6 months. These letters were dated earlier. Forgeries, maybe, or real letters from when Marcus was already being poisoned. Just misdated. But proving it, that required time Warren didn't have. Finally, Thornton said, we address Mr. Hartfield's motives. A 62-year-old widower who sees a young girl and within hours has physically assaulted her legal guardian and taken her to his isolated ranch, who has posted an extraordinary bond, $50,000, for a child he'd never met, who keeps her in his home unsupervised save for a housekeeper. Brennan examined that child, Warren said, standing. She had torture wounds. Discipline misinterpreted by a troubled, fanciful child, Thornton replied smoothly. Mr. Castellano's methods may have been harsh by modern standards, but frontier children require firm guidance. What's troubling is Mr. Hartfield's immediate excessive response, the violence, the obsessive financial commitment, the isolation of the child from her blood family. He paused, letting the implications settle like dust. We ask this court to recognize legal guardianship as established, to return Ruby May Castellano to her uncle's care, and to investigate whether Mr. Hartfield's actions constitute attempted kidnapping. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Crowley's gavel cracked. Order! The silence that followed felt like held breath. This court recognizes the legal guardianship papers as valid, Crowley said. His voice was heavy. The medical evidence regarding Marcus Castellano's mental state is concerning. If he was incompetent, then claims of partnership or inheritance become questionable. Warren's hands gripped the rail. However, Crowley continued, Dr. Brennan's report regarding the child's physical condition cannot be dismissed. The injuries are real and severe. He paused, weighing justice against law. Hartfield, you have 30 days to produce concrete evidence of unfitness or criminal behavior. Not speculation, not concern evidence. If you cannot, the child will be returned to her legal guardian, and we will consider charges regarding your initial actions. The gavel fell. Ruby, sitting beside Warren, made a small sound. Then her eyes rolled back and she crumpled. Doc Brennan caught her before she hit the floor. Outside, through the courthouse windows, the sky had darkened. Late snow was coming. 30 days. Victor smiled at Warren from across the room, and it was the smile of a man who'd already won. Ruby woke in Warren's guest room, Doc Brennan pressing a cool cloth to her forehead. The ride back from Timber Ridge had been silent except for the wind and the creak of the wagon. 30 days. Warren stood at the window, watching the sky darken. March was a bitter month. Too late for true winter, too early for spring, just cold that wouldn't quit. She needs rest, Doc said. And so do you. But rest felt like surrender. When Doc left, Warren sat by Ruby's bed. She stared at the ceiling, that pocket watch clutched against her chest like armor. I'm sorry, Warren said. You promised. Her voice was small and hollow. I know. Uncle Victor's going to take me back. Not if I can help it. You said that before. The judge didn't listen. Warren had no answer that wasn't a lie. The law had spoken. Blood and papers beat good intentions every time. I want to show you something, he said finally. Tomorrow, if you're feeling steady, something about this ranch. She didn't respond, just held that watch tighter. Morning came cold and clear, the kind of day that hurt your lungs when you breathe deep. Warren found Ruby in the kitchen, eating Mrs. Chin's dumplings with careful small bites, still eating like food might be taken away. You up for a walk? Warren asked. She nodded, wary. He dressed her in warm clothes, a coat that had belonged to his son, boots lined with sheep's wool. They walked out to the ridge, where the cattle grazed on winter-brown grass. The wind smelled of pine and distant snow. This is Hartfield land, Warren said. 50,000 acres. Took me 30 years to build. Started with nothing but a strong back and the good sense to keep my word. Ruby watched the cattle move slow across the hillside. Every morning, I count them, Warren continued. Part of the ritual. A rancher knows his stock. Knows which cows are due to calve, which steers are ready for market, which ones are trouble. He pointed. See that old girl there? The one with the crooked horn? She's been with me 14 years. Survived 2 hard winters and a wolf attack. Know why she's still here? Ruby shook her head. Because she's tough. And because I pay attention. I see her, know her. He looked down at the girl. That's what a family does. Sees you, knows you, keeps you safe even when the winter's hard. Her fingers touched the watch in her pocket. Family ain't blood, Warren said. It's who you'd walk through fire for, who'd do the same for you. They stood quiet for a moment, breath steaming in the cold air. Papa used to draw brands, Ruby said suddenly. In his ledger, every brand we traded for, he'd draw it perfect. With numbers beside it, how many head, what they kissed, where they went. Good record keeping. I can draw them too, all of them, from memory. She looked up at him. Would that help? Might. If the numbers tell a different story than your uncle's been telling. They do. Her voice was certain. Uncle Victor's probate reports say 300 cattle died over 2 years, disease and hard winter. But Papa's book showed them sold, to ranches in Wyoming, for $43 a head. But Warren did the math fast. 300 head at $43 was just shy of $13,000. Money that should have been in the estate. Money Victor claimed as loss. You sure? Numbers don't lie, she said. Papa taught me that. That evening, Miguel Santos rode up to the ranch. Warren hadn't seen him since the stable, the day this all started. Miguel was past 50, lean and weathered, with guilt in his eyes. Senor Hartfield. He took off his hat, turned it in his hands. I need to speak with you. They sat on the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. The air smelled of wood smoke and coming rain. I worked for Senor Marcus 15 years, Miguel said. Good man, fair. He treat me like family. His voice roughened. When he gets sick, I should have done something. I should have. You couldn't have known. I knew something was wrong. Miguel's knuckles were white on his hat brim. The way Victor watched him drink that tea every night. The way Marcus's hands shake more and more. The way Victor start taking over the books, the orders, everything. He looked at Warren. The day before Marcus died, he called me to his room. Victor was in town. Marcus, his mind was clear that day, like the fever break for a moment. Warren leaned forward. He say to me, Miguel, if something happened to me, you must remember. The truth is in the wall, behind the loose board, in the warehouse office, south wall, 3 feet from the floor. The truth is there. For Ruby. Then Victor come back, and Marcus, he go quiet again. Next morning, he was dead. The wall, Warren repeated. I thought he was confused. Fever crazy. But maybe... Miguel's eyes met Warren's. Maybe he hides something. Papers, maybe. Evidence. The warehouse is Victor's property now. See, locked up tight. He fired me 2 days after Marcus died. Said he don't need so many men, but I think he don't want me around. Don't want me to remember. Warren thought about loose boards and hidden papers. About a dying man leaving clues for his daughter. About 30 days running out like sand through fingers. You know the warehouse layout? Warren asked. Like my own hand. Victor keeping men there at night. Miguel smiled, thin and dangerous. Only his foreman, a man who drink heavy and sleep sound. The sun touched the horizon. The temperature was dropping, rain coming, maybe, or late snow. You willing to risk it? Warren asked. For Senor Marcus? For that little girl? Miguel's jaw set. I risk everything. Spring Creek ran along the eastern boundary of what used to be Marcus Castellano's land. The property line had been disputed for years. Victor claimed it ran 200 yards west of where the original survey stakes had been placed. Those stakes had vanished a decade ago. Warren rode out with the county surveyor, a Norwegian named Olaf, who'd mapped half of Montana territory. The March thaw had started early, ice breaking up in the creek, mud sucking at their boots, the smell of wet earth and pine sap, sharp and clean. "Here," Olaf said, kneeling by the creek bank. The water had risen with snowmelt, then dropped again, exposing a section of bank that had been underwater for months. There, half buried in mud, was an iron stake with the territorial surveyor's mark. "Original 1885 marker," Olaf said. He paced off the distance, checking his notes. "This puts the true property line 200 yards east of Victor Castellano's filed claim." Warren did the math. 200 yards across a 5-mile boundary was substantial acreage. Grazing land Victor had been using, selling hay from, running cattle on, for years. "That's theft," Warren said. "That's thousands of dollars in theft," Olaf corrected. He pulled the stake free, mud clinging to its base. "I'll file an amended survey with the Territorial Land Office. But Mr. Hartfield, this proves fraud. If Victor knew these stakes existed and filed a false claim anyway, that gives us legal standing. It's more than that. It proves a pattern. A man who'll steal land will steal other things." Olaf wiped mud from his hands. "Question is, what else has he stolen?" Warren thought about 300 cattle and $13,000, about a dying man's shaking hands and bitter tea, about a child who remembered every number in her father's books. "Let me ask you something," Warren said. "If a man kept duplicate records, one set showing real transactions, one set showing false ones, where would he hide the real books?" Olaf smiled. "Somewhere he could access them if needed, but somewhere the other man wouldn't think to look. Like behind a loose board in a wall. Like that, yes." Miguel came after midnight. The moon was thin and cold, barely enough light to see by. Warren met him at the stable. Both men dressed dark. "The foreman drinks every night," Miguel whispered. "By now he's snoring." They rode slow and quiet toward the Castellano warehouse. It sat 2 miles from the main trading post, a long building where goods were stored before shipping. The wood smelled of old hay and grain dust. One window showed lamplight. The foreman's quarters at the far end. Miguel had a key. "Still fits," he murmured. "Victor, he forget I keep a copy." The door opened silent. Inside, the warehouse was dark and close, full of the smell of canvas and leather and mouse droppings. They moved by feel, Miguel leading. "The office," he breathed. "This way." A small room in the back corner, barely big enough for a desk and chair. Miguel struck a match, shielding it with his hand. The flame illuminated peeling wallpaper and water stains. "South wall," Miguel said. 3 feet from floor." Warren ran his hands along the boards. Most were solid, nailed tight, but one, low down near the corner, shifted when he pressed. He pulled his knife and worked the board loose. It came away with a soft creak that sounded loud as thunder in the quiet. Behind it, wrapped in oilcloth, was a leather-bound ledger. Miguel's hands shook as Warren pulled it free. The oilcloth crinkled, loud in the silence. The ledger smelled of old ink and paper, preserved against the damp. Warren opened it careful. The first page was dated 1885. Marcus Castellano's handwriting, neat and precise. Partnership agreement, Victor Castellano, 60%. Marcus Castellano, 40%. Equal shares all livestock, land, trade goods, profits. Witnessed, Judge Emmett Crowley. Below that, 2 signatures, Victor's bold and careless. Marcus's careful and small. Warren flipped pages. Years of entries, cattle purchases and sales. Hay shipments, trade goods. Every transaction logged with the precision of a man who understood that numbers didn't lie. Then, starting in 1886, the discrepancies began. Warren's entry, 300 head purchased from Rollins, Wyoming. $43 head, total $12,900. But beside it, in pencil, Marcus had written, "V's report to probate, 300 head lost to disease. $12,900 claimed as loss." Page after page of the same pattern. Cattle sold, Victor reporting them as dead. Hay shipped, Victor claiming spoilage. Profits earned, Victor claiming expenses. Miguel leaned close, reading by matchlight. "Dios mío," he whispered. Warren tallied numbers in his head. Conservative estimate, $180,000, stolen over 3 years, from his own brother, from his niece's inheritance. "This proves everything," Warren said. "Partnership fraud, embezzlement, motive for," a board creaked. Both men froze. The foreman stood in the doorway, lamp in one hand, shotgun in the other. He wasn't drunk, wasn't even surprised. "Victor said you'd come eventually," the foreman said. His voice was gravel and whiskey. "Said to watch for you. Said there'd be a bonus if I caught you." Miguel's hand moved toward his belt. "Don't." The shotgun leveled. "Put the book on the desk and step back." Warren's mind raced. The ledger was everything: proof, motive, justice. Without it, Ruby went back to Victor. With it, they had a chance. "You know what's in this book?" Warren asked, stalling. "Don't care. Victor pays my wages. You're trespassing." "He's been stealing from his own brother's child. $180,000. The foreman's eyes flickered. "Not my business." It will be when the judge hangs him for murder." "You want to be the man who helped hide evidence?" "I want to keep my job and not get shot doing it." "Book. Now." Warren set the ledger on the desk. The foreman smiled. Then Miguel threw the lamp. The lamp shattered against the wall. Oil spread like liquid fire. Flame roared up the dry wood, catching wallpaper, old grain dust, anything that would burn. The foreman swore and dove for the ledger. Warren was faster. He grabbed it off his desk and shoved Miguel toward the door. "Go." Behind them, the fire climbed. Smoke thick and black, choking. The smell of burning wood and oil and years of accumulated dust. Heat scorched Warren's back as they ran. The foreman's shotgun boomed. Buckshot tore through the doorframe above Warren's head. They hit the main warehouse at a dead run. Miguel knew the way, even in darkness and smoke. Past crates and barrels, through narrow aisles toward the loading door. Behind them, the fire roared louder. The old building was going up like kindling. They burst outside into cold air that hurt to breathe. Warren clutched the ledger to his chest. Miguel was coughing, bent double. "The horses!" Warren gasped. They were already spooked, pulling at their ties. Warren shoved the ledger into his saddlebag and cut the ropes. They mounted and rode hard into the darkness. Behind them, the warehouse lit the night sky orange. By morning, it would be ash. Doc Brennan came to the ranch at dawn. Warren met her on the porch, still smelling of smoke. His hands were blistered from the hot ledger binding. "Victor's claiming you burned his warehouse," she said, without preamble. "Says you destroyed evidence of legitimate business dealings. Says Miguel Santos is a disgruntled former employee helping you commit arson. We didn't start that fire." "I believe you, but believing and proving are different animals." She climbed the porch steps. "I didn't come here to talk about the fire. I came about Marcus Castellano's death certificate." Warren's attention sharpened. "I went back through my records. I didn't treat Marcus. He had a doctor from Helena, a man named Pearson." Her voice was tight with controlled anger. "The same doctor, Pearson, who testified Marcus was mentally incompetent. Victor's man. Victor's paid man. The death certificate lists cause as consumption and fever. Natural causes. No investigation needed." She pulled papers from her bag. "But Ruby's nightmare kept bothering me. That thing she screamed. The tea was bitter." Warren remembered. Ruby thrashing in bed, screaming words she wouldn't say awake. "Arsenic has a metallic taste," Doc said. "Bitter, especially if you're sensitive to it." And the symptoms Marcus showed, shaking hands, confusion, progressive weakness over months, they matched chronic arsenic poisoning perfectly. The morning suddenly felt colder. "You're saying Victor poisoned his brother?" "I'm saying it's possible. More than possible." Doc's eyes were hard. "I petitioned the Judge Crowley for an exhumation order. If Marcus's bones show arsenic content, we'll know." "How long?" "Exhumation takes 2 weeks. Analysis another week." She paused. "Warren, if this is murder, Ruby wasn't just an orphan Victor was abusing. She was a witness he was trying to silence." The implications settled like lead in Warren's gut. Ruby's stomach ailments that Victor had mentioned. The way she'd been kept isolated, half-starved. "He was poisoning her too," Warren said. "Small doses, enough to make her sick, weak, compliant, maybe planning to claim she died of the same fever as her father." Doc's hands clenched on her medical bag. "If you'd arrived at that stable 1 month later, Warren, that child would be dead." 1 month. Ruby could have died while he was worrying about cattle prices and whether to buy a new breeding mare. The weight of that settled on him like winter snow, cold and suffocating. All the times he'd ridden past the Castellano place, all the days he'd spent building his ranch, comfortable and alone, while a child starved in chains 2 miles away. "She needs to know," Doc said quietly, "about her father, about what was done to her. She's 9 years old. She's 9 years old, and she already knows something's wrong. She screamed about bitter tea in her sleep. She's living with the truth in her bones. She just doesn't have words for it yet." Doc's voice gentled. "Sometimes naming the monster makes it smaller." Warren found Ruby in the kitchen, organizing Mrs. Chen's buttons by color and size. The morning light through the window made her look younger than 9, fragile as creek ice in spring. "Ruby," Warren said, "need to talk to you about something hard." She set down a blue button, waited. He sat across from her, choosing words careful as picking through broken glass. "You remember telling me your papa got sick? That Uncle Victor made him tea every night?" Her hand stilled, on the buttons. Doc Brennan thinks that tea might have had something bad in it. Poison. Something that made your papa sick slow over months. Ruby's breathing changed. Faster, shallower. And we think maybe you got some of that same tea. That's why your stomach hurt. Why you got so thin. I knew, she whispered. Warren waited. Not poison. I didn't know the word. But I knew the tea was wrong. Papa would drink it and get worse. I'd drink it, and my belly would hurt for days. Her fingers twisted together. I told Papa. I said the tea makes us sick. He said... Her voice broke. He said Uncle Victor was trying to help. That I was being ungrateful. Your Papa didn't know. But I knew. I knew, and I didn't... I should have poured it out. Should have stopped him from drinking it. Should have... Ruby. Warren's voice was firm. You were 8 years old. A child. This is not your fault. Papa died. Your Papa died because a grown man decided to murder him. Not because a little girl didn't pour out tea. She was crying now, silent tears that tracked down her thin face. Uncle Victor said I was lying. Said I made up stories. Said I killed Papa by being difficult, by making him worry. And Warren's fist clenched under the table. Your uncle is a liar and a killer, and he's going to pay for what he did. A promise? He thought about exhumation orders and arsenic analysis in courtrooms where rich men's lawyers twisted truth into shapes that suited them. Thought about Ruby's shaking voice in a dead man's ledger and justice that might never come. But he looked at her tear-wet face and said, I promise. 3 days later, the sheriff arrived with news. Victor Castellano had been arrested at the rail station in Helena, carpet bag full of cash and a one-way ticket to Chicago. When they searched his office at the Trading Post, they found something interesting. A receipt from the Mercantile, dated 8 months before Marcus's death, 5 pounds of rat poison, arsenic-based, signed for by Victor Castellano. The sheriff laid the receipt on Warren's kitchen table. The paper smelled of old ink and damp. That's premeditation, the sheriff said. He bought it before Marcus even got sick, before he needed it for rats. He paused. Judge Crowley's moved up the exhumation. In the custody hearing, 1 week from today. If the bones show arsenic, Victor's facing murder charges, and that guardianship paper won't be worth the ink it's written in. 1 week, 7 days for science to prove what Warren's gut had known since that first day in the stable. That Victor Castellano was the kind of evil that came wrapped in legal papers and polite smiles. 7 days for Ruby to find her voice or lose her future. Warren looked at the receipt. 5 pounds. Enough to kill a man slow. Enough to start on a child after. The rain had started outside, cold and steady. Still too early for true spring. Just gray skies and mud and the smell of smoke from distant fires. But the thaw was coming. And with it, the truth buried in frozen ground. The courthouse was packed tighter than Sunday service. Every seat filled, people standing against the walls. The April morning was bright outside, but inside the air was close and thick. Tobacco smoke and wool coats and the sharp smell of nervous sweat. Victor sat at the defendant's table with his Chicago lawyers. Thornton and 2 associates, all 3 in expensive suits, all 3 radiating the kind of confidence that money buys. Warren sat with Ruby on the other side. Doc Brennan behind them, Miguel in the back, hat in his hands. Judge Crowley took the bench. His face gave nothing away, but his eyes found Warren's for just a moment. A soldier's acknowledgement before battle. This court is convened to hear evidence in the matter of custody for Ruby May Castellano and to consider charges of fraud and murder against Victor Castellano. The room went silent except for the scrape of boots and the tick of the wall clock. Mr. Hartfield, the judge said, you petitioned for this emergency hearing. Present your evidence. Warren stood. His hands were steady. Your Honor, we have proof of systematic fraud spanning 3 years. Partnership documents, financial records, and evidence of embezzlement totaling $180,000. Thornton rose smooth as oil. Objection. Mr. Hartfield obtained these alleged documents through arson and breaking and entering. Any such evidence is inadmissible. The fire was set by your client's foreman, Warren said. We were retrieving stolen property. So you admit to trespassing and theft. I admit to finding the truth your client tried to burn. Judge Crowley's gavel cracked. Gentlemen, Mr. Hartfield, present your evidence. We'll determine admissibility. Warren laid the ledger on the table. The leather was smoke-stained, but intact. He opened to the first page. Partnership agreement, dated 1880, signed by both brothers. 60-40 split of all assets, livestock, and profits. Thornton barely glanced at it. Your Honor, this could easily be a forgery. A document conveniently discovered in a fire that destroyed the defendant's warehouse. The handwriting could be faked, the dates altered. Without corroboration, I corroborate it, Judge Crowley said. The courtroom stirred. I witnessed this partnership agreement myself in 1885. I was present when both brothers signed it. Victor Castellano and Marcus Castellano were equal partners, with Marcus holding a 40% stake. The judge's voice was iron. That document is genuine. Thornton's confidence flickered. Even so, previous testimony established that Marcus Castellano was mentally incompetent. A man who cannot manage his own affairs cannot enforce a partnership. That testimony was bought and paid for, Warren said. This ledger proves Marcus managed every detail of the business right up until he was poisoned. Alleged poisoning, Thornton corrected, based on the hysterical nightmares of a traumatized child and the speculation of a country doctor, based on arsenic found in Marcus Castellano's exhumed remains, Judge Crowley said. He held up a sealed report. Territorial medical examiner's findings received this morning. Marcus Castellano died of chronic arsenic poisoning, administered over a period of 6 months. The courtroom erupted, voices overlapping, boots scraping, chairs creaking, the gavel cracked again. Order! Victor's face had gone white. Furthermore, the judge continued, evidence shows the defendant purchased 5 pounds of arsenic 8 months before his brother's death. The receipt has been entered into evidence. Thornton rallied. Arsenic is commonly used for pest control. The purchase proves nothing about intent. The ledger proves intent, Warren said. He flipped pages. Every transaction Marcus logged honestly, Victor reported fraudulently. Cattle sold, Victor claimed as dead loss. Profits earned, Victor claimed as expenses. 3 years of systematic theft from his own brother. This ledger could still be fabricated, Thornton insisted. You need corroboration. Someone who can verify these numbers independently. Warren looked at Ruby. She sat small in her chair, hands folded in her lap, that gold pocket watch visible in her dress pocket. Ruby, Warren said gently. You don't have to, but if you can. She stood. The courtroom quieted. A 9-year-old girl, thin and pale, moving toward the witness stand like she was walking through deep water. Judge Crowley's voice softened. Miss Castellano, you understand you'll be testifying under oath? Yes, sir. Her voice was barely audible. You can speak truthfully about what you know? Numbers don't lie, she said, louder this time. Papa taught me that. She took the stand. Her hand slipped into her pocket, touching the watch. Warren approached. Ruby, can you tell the court about your father's record-keeping? Papa kept the books for the trading post. Every transaction, he'd write it down. Date, item, amount, buyer. He had perfect handwriting. He'd let me watch. Sometimes he'd quiz me. Ruby, what did we pay for those steers in February? And I'd remember. Remember how? In my head, I can see the pages, like they're right in front of me. She pulled the watch from her pocket, held it like an anchor. Papa said it was a gift, that numbers would never lie to me the way people could. Thornton stood. Your Honor, a child's memory is notoriously unreliable. This is hardly— Let her speak, the judge said. Ruby's fingers tightened on the watch. Uncle Victor's probate report says 300 head of cattle died in 1887, disease and hard winter, but Papa's ledger shows they were sold to the Rollins Ranch in Wyoming. March 14th, 1887. 298 mixed breed, 2 breeding bulls, $43 a head. Total, $12,900. Buyer was Thomas Rollins. Payment received April 2nd, check number 447 from Wyoming Cattlemen's Bank. The silence was absolute. In 1888, Ruby continued, her voice growing stronger, Uncle Victor reported 15 tons of hay spoiled in the warehouse. Papa's book shows it shipped to Fort Benton, June 6, 1888, 15 tons at $8 per ton, $120. Paid by Army Quartermaster, receipt number 2416. She wasn't reading, wasn't looking at notes, just reciting from memory, perfect and precise. September 1888, Uncle Victor claimed $200 lost to damaged trade goods. Papa's book shows those goods sold to the Blackfoot Reservation, September 19th, $212.40. Paid in cash by Agent Morrison. Page after page, discrepancy after discrepancy, Ruby recited them all. Dates, amounts, buyer names, check numbers. Her voice never wavered. The watch never left her hand. The courtroom was frozen. Even Thornton had stopped objecting. Papa's true books show profits of $63,400 those 3 years, Ruby said. Uncle Victor's reports claimed losses of $42,000. The difference is $105,400. She paused. Plus the cattle he said died but actually sold. Plus the land he claimed that wasn't his. Total theft, $181,200. Stolen from Papa. Stolen from me. Her voice broke on the last word, but she kept going. Papa said, if something happens to me, remember the numbers. Numbers tell the truth when people can't. Tears tracked down her face. Uncle Victor made Papa drink bitter tea every night for 6 months. Made me drink it too, said it was medicine. Said we were ungrateful when we said it tasted wrong. Papa got sicker and sicker. His hands shook so bad he couldn't write anymore. Then he died. She looked directly at Victor for the first time. You killed him, and you tried to kill me. But I remembered the numbers, every single one, and numbers don't lie. The courtroom exploded. Judge Crowley's gavel cracked again and again. Order, order in this court. But the damage was done. Ruby's testimony, precise, detailed, damning, had torn through Victor's defense like buckshot through paper. Thornton was conferring urgently with his client. Victor's face had gone from white to gray, his hands shaking on the table. Warren helped Ruby down from the stand. She collapsed against him, exhausted, still clutching that pocket watch. You did it, he whispered. You told the truth. Outside, through the high courthouse windows, the April sun broke through clouds. The smell of rain-washed earth drifted through the open vault doors, spring finally arriving. Judge Crowley looked at Victor. Does the defense have anything to add? Thornton stood. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Your Honor, we request a recess to confer with our client. Oh, denied. The judge's voice was granite. Mr. Castellano, do you have anything to say in your defense? Victor stared at the table, at his shaking hands, at the ruin of all his lies. No, Your Honor, he whispered. The gavel fell. Victor Castellano, you are hereby found guilty of fraud, embezzlement, and the murder of your brother Marcus Castellano. You are also charged with the attempted murder of Ruby Mae Castellano through poisoning. Judge Crowley's voice filled the courthouse. Outside, early afternoon sun warmed the air. Inside, justice was cold and final. You will be remanded to territorial custody, pending transfer to the prison at Deer Lodge. Your assets are forfeit to your brother's estate, to be held in trust for his daughter. All claims of guardianship are hereby terminated. Victor didn't look up, just sat with his head down, hands still shaking, a broken man who'd gambled everything and lost. As for Ruby Mae Castellano, the judge's voice gentled. This court recognizes her rightful inheritance, 40% partnership in the Castellano holdings, plus damages. Estimated value, $181,200, to be managed in trust until her majority. Ruby's hand found Warren's, squeezed tight. Furthermore, Judge Crowley said, Mr. Warren Hartfield has petitioned for legal adoption. Given the circumstances, the child's clear preference in Mr. Hartfield's demonstrated character, this court grants that petition, effective immediately. The gavel fell one last time. Warren looked down at Ruby. You want that? Want to be a Hartfield? She nodded. Then, can I keep Mae, Ruby Mae Hartfield? You can keep whatever you want. It's your name. Papa gave me Mae, for Mama. I want to keep that part. Then Ruby Mae Hartfield it is, she smiled. Small and tentative, like a flower testing the spring air, but real. They led Victor out in chains. He passed Warren on the courthouse steps, sheriff on either side. You took everything, Victor said. His voice was hollow. No, Warren replied. You threw it away. There's a difference. Victor's laugh was bitter. For what? For a child? For sentiment? You risked your fortune, your reputation, everything, and I'd do it again. Warren's voice was quiet but firm. A man's wealth is measured in what he'd walk through fire for, not what he'd burn others to keep. Victor had no answer to that. They took him away. Warren watched until the wagon disappeared north, toward Deer Lodge and a cell that would hold him until the rope did its final work. Ruby stood beside him, one hand in his, the other holding that pocket watch. Papa would have liked you, she said. Reckon I wish I'd known him. You know me. That's what Papa wanted. Someone to know me. Really know me. She looked up. Am I home now? Really home? Warren squeezed her hand. Really home. 8 weeks later, spring roundup brought surprises. The crew found the cattle in a box canyon, 2 miles from the old Castellano warehouse, sealed behind a deliberately collapsed trail. 300 head wearing Marcus's brand, Circle C with a star. Victor must have driven them here himself, Miguel said, examining the brands. Report them dead, hide them away, sell them later when the probate settled. Warren did the math. At current market rates, $43 a head. Almost $13,000 in stolen cattle. Ruby sat on her horse beside him, learning the rancher's trade. She wore her father's brand now, modified. The Circle C combined with Hartfield's H, creating something new, something that honored the past while building a future. These are mine? She asked. 40% yours, Warren said. Per the partnership agreement, you're a cattle owner now. In a Hartfield. She touched the brand on the nearest cow's flank. Papa marked them, years ago, and they're still here. Your papa knew what he was doing. Left you more than money, left you proof. Evidence that would outlive him. Ruby was quiet for a moment, watching the cattle graze on new spring grass. The air smelled of warm earth and wildflowers. Somewhere, a meadowlark sang. "Can we add new calves to my brand?" she asked. "Start my own herd." Already planning for next season. That's thinking like a rancher. Papa taught me to think ahead. Count what you have, plan what you need, remember what matters. She smiled. Numbers and family. That's what lasts. Warren watched her sit straight in the saddle, confidence growing like grass after rain. Not the broken child he'd found in chains, not the frightened girl who'd collapsed in court, just Ruby Mae Hartfield, 9 years old, cattle owner, survivor, daughter. They rode the fence line as the sun dropped low, painting the sky orange and gold. The Montana hills rolled away forever, spring green and full of promise. "You know what?" Ruby said. "What's that?" "I think I'm going to like it here." Warren smiled. "Reckon I'm going to like having you here." They turned their horses toward home, toward the stone house on the ridge, where lamplight glowed warm in the windows, where Mrs. Chen was making dumplings for supper, where Ruby's room waited with clean sheets and books and all the safety a child should have. Behind them, the cattle grazed peaceful. Ahead, the ranch spread out like a promise kept. Warren had gone to buy a horse that January morning. By spring, he'd found something better, a daughter, a purpose, a reason to keep building when the work got hard. Family, it turned out, wasn't about blood. It was about who you'd walk through fire for and who'd remember you when you were gone. Ruby Mae's hand slipped into his as they rode. She didn't need to clutch that pocket watch anymore. She'd found something stronger to hold on to. Folks around Timber Ridge still talk about that winter. About the millionaire rancher who went to buy a horse and came home with a daughter instead. About the trial where a 9-year-old girl with a pocket watch and a perfect memory brought down a murderer. But that's not really what the story's about. It's about a man who'd lost his family and thought the empty years were all he had left, who learned that family isn't something you're born into. It's something you choose when the choice costs everything. It's about a child who survived hell and found the courage to speak truth when silence would have been safer, who learned that the numbers her papa taught her weren't just for accounting, they were for justice. Reckon some folks thought Warren was a fool, risking $50,000. His reputation, his comfortable life for a girl he'd known less than a week. But those folks never understood what Warren figured out that January morning in the stable. A man can have 50,000 acres and die alone, or he can have one person worth walking through fire for and die rich. Spring came full to Montana that year, the kind of spring that makes you believe in second chances. Ruby learned to ride fence line and count cattle and read the weather like her papa taught her to read. Numbers. She planted a garden behind the house, flowers mostly, bright splashes of color that Martha would have loved. The gold pocket watch sits on the mantle now. Ruby doesn't need to carry it anymore. She knows what it said all along. True partner. That's what they became. Not by blood, but by choice. Not by law, but by the kind of bond that forms when two people save each other's lives. On warm evenings, you can see them on the ridge. An old rancher and a young girl riding the fence line as the sun sets, talking about cattle counts and weather predictions and what to plant next season. Building a future from the ashes of the past. That's family. That's legacy. That's what lasts when the numbers are all tallied and the winter finally breaks. The rest is just details.